They laughed when my ex announced I was his charity case at the Christmas party. His new fiancée smirked as he revealed my pathetic past, but when the room fell silent and all eyes turned to the entrance, I knew their nightmare was about to begin. Before we dive into this story of ultimate karma, hit that like button if you believe dignity always wins, and subscribe, because this twist, you won't see it coming. My name is Gabrielle, and I need to tell you about the night that changed everything. It was December 23rd, and snowflakes were falling gently outside the tall windows of the Riverside estate. The annual holiday gala was in full swing, with champagne flowing and laughter echoing through the marble halls. I stood near the gallery wall admiring a Monet reproduction, wearing a simple black dress that Laurent had picked out for me in Paris last spring. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed for attention. That's always been my style. I'm 34 now, and I work as a senior curator at the Metropolitan Art Museum. It's a job I love, a position I fought for, and a career I built from absolutely nothing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that moment, standing in that beautiful hall, completely unaware that my past was about to collide with my present in the most devastating way possible. Laurent, my husband, was supposed to be traveling for business in Geneva. At least, that's what everyone at the party believed. I'd come alone, planning to make a brief appearance, network a little, and head home to our quiet brownstone in the city. I've never been one for big social events, even though my life now requires them. I sipped my champagne, exchanged pleasantries with the museum director, and genuinely thought I'd make it through the evening without incident. That's when I saw him. Derek Morrison, my ex-boyfriend from college, the man who shattered my heart 8 years ago when I was at my absolute lowest. He looked exactly as I remembered, maybe a little softer around the edges, wearing an expensive suit that didn't quite fit right, and on his arm was a woman who could only be described as Instagram incarnate, blonde extensions, designer dress with visible logos, and a ring that caught every light in the room. She was beautiful in that manufactured way, and she knew it. My stomach dropped, but I kept my composure. I'm good at that now. Years of board meetings and donor dinners have taught me how to keep my face neutral even when my heart is racing. I thought maybe they wouldn't see me. Maybe I could slip out through the side entrance, but fate, or karma, or whatever you want to call it, had other plans. Courtney, that's her name, spotted me first. I watched her lean into Derek, whispering something while staring directly at me. Her eyes widened with recognition, and not the good kind. The kind that says she knows exactly who you are because she's heard stories. Bad stories. Embarrassing stories. The kind of stories an ex-boyfriend tells when he wants to make himself look like the hero of his own narrative. Derek turned, and our eyes met across the room. For a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Surprise, maybe? Or was it guilt? But it vanished quickly, replaced by something worse. Confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've won at life while someone else lost. They walked over. Of course they did, because the universe apparently has a sense of humor. "Gabrielle," Derek said, his voice carrying that fake warmth people use when they're about to be cruel. "Wow. It's been what, 8 years? You look exactly the same." It wasn't a compliment. Everything about his tone suggested I hadn't grown, hadn't evolved, hadn't changed. That I was still that struggling grad student he'd left behind. "Derek," I replied simply, keeping my voice even. "It's been a while." Courtney extended her hand, her nails perfectly manicured, her engagement ring deliberately positioned to catch the light. "I'm Courtney, Derek's fiancée. I've heard so much about you." The way she said it made my skin crawl. I shook her hand briefly, feeling the weight of judgment in her grip. She was sizing me up, comparing, calculating, and finding me wanting. "So," Derek continued, rocking back on his heels in that self-satisfied way men do when they think they're being charming. "Still working at the museum? That's cute. I remember you were really passionate about art history or whatever. As if my entire career, my life's work, was just a hobby, just something I did to pass the time. I'm a senior curator, I said quietly, refusing to let him bait me. Right, right, he nodded, but I could see he wasn't really listening. That must be nice. Peaceful, not as demanding as the pharmaceutical world, I'm sure. I just made regional director. Youngest in the company's history, actually. Courtney beamed at him like he'd just announced he'd cured cancer. He's being modest. The promotion came with a $60,000 raise. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell them that I'd spent more than that on a single acquisition for the museum last month, that the foundation I helped run had donated millions to arts programs across the country. But I didn't, because some things, some truths, are more powerful when they're revealed at exactly the right moment. That's wonderful, I said instead. Congratulations. But Derek wasn't done. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was Courtney's presence giving him courage, or maybe he'd always been this cruel and I'd been too young and in love to see it. He leaned in, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a confidential tone, but was loud enough for the people around us to hear. You know, Gabrielle, I've got to be honest. I'm really glad things worked out the way they did. Between us, I mean. No offense, but you were in such a rough place back then. 3 jobs, that tiny apartment with the broken heater, always stressed about money. I tried to help, you know. Loaned you cash when you couldn't make rent. But a man can only do so much. My face burned. Those memories, those private, painful memories of when I was 26 and struggling through graduate school, working as a waitress, a dog walker, and a weekend gallery assistant just to survive, were being aired out like dirty laundry. The people around us had stopped their conversations. They were listening now, drawn to the drama like moths to flame. Courtney placed her hand on Derek's arm, but not to stop him, to encourage him. Babe, you're so generous. Not everyone would have stuck around as long as you did. Well, Derek shrugged with false modesty. I tried, but eventually you have to think about your own future, right? I needed someone who could match my ambition, someone established. No shade, Gabrielle, but we were just at different levels. I felt something crack inside me. Not break, mind you. I was past breaking. But crack, like ice before it splinters. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself, to say something, anything, when my phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out, glancing down at the screen. Unknown number. The message was simple. On my way, 5 minutes. L. Something in my chest loosened. I looked up at Derek and Courtney, at their smug expressions, at the small crowd that had gathered to witness my humiliation, and I smiled. Just a little. Just enough. Derek noticed. What's funny? Nothing, I said, checking my watch. Nothing at all. But he saw the shift in me, the change in my posture, the quiet confidence that settled over my shoulders like an old familiar coat. It confused him. This wasn't how this scene was supposed to play out. I was supposed to be embarrassed, apologetic, maybe even grateful for the time he'd spent with me all those years ago. So he pushed harder. Courtney and I are getting married in June, he announced loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. Vineyard wedding, we're spending $150,000 on it, no expense spared. Because when you work hard and make something of yourself, you can afford to celebrate properly. Courtney flashed her ring again, turning her hand this way and that. 2 carats. Derek designed it himself. Some of us married up, not across. The words hung in the air like poison. I saw Patricia, the museum director, start to move toward us, her face concerned. I saw other guests exchanging uncomfortable glances. But no one stopped them. No one defended me. Because in that moment they didn't know. They couldn't know. I checked my watch again. 2 minutes. Derek, I said softly, you should really stop talking now. He laughed. Actually laughed. Why? Embarrassed? Come on, Gabrielle. There's no shame in having a modest life. Not everyone can be successful. Someone has to work those regular jobs, right? Museums are important. Culture and all that. Even if the pay is terrible. Courtney pulled out her phone, angling it toward us. This is going to make such good content, exposing fake bougie people who pretend they're more than they are. That's when the gala host, Mrs. Pemberton, took the microphone at the front of the room. Her voice rang out clearly, cutting through the conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to dinner, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special. As many of you know, this year's arts initiative has been our most successful ever, thanks to an extraordinarily generous donation of $5 million from our evening's most distinguished benefactor. Derek whispered to Courtney, "Probably the Rothschild family again. Old money always shows up to these things." Mrs. Pemberton continued, "Though he couldn't be here earlier due to urgent business in Geneva, I'm delighted to announce that he's just arrived." My phone buzzed again. "I'm here." The large doors to the main hall opened, and the entire room shifted. It's hard to describe that moment, that collective intake of breath when someone enters a space and everything changes. The air itself seemed to rearrange itself. Laurent Beaumont walked in, and the world tilted. He's not a tall man by American standards, maybe 5'11", but he carries himself with the kind of quiet authority that makes him seem larger than life. Dark hair, slightly silver at the temples, a suit that was custom-made in Milan, though you'd never know it from looking at him because he wears expensive things like they're ordinary. And his eyes, those deep brown eyes, scanned the room with practiced ease until they found me. His entire face softened. That guarded, public expression he wears when he's in business mode melted away, and he smiled. At me. Only at me. He walked through the crowd, and I watched people part for him like the Red Sea. The mayor nodded in greeting. Old money socialites tried to catch his attention, but Laurent moved past them all with polite nods, his focus entirely on me. Derek and Courtney had gone quiet. They didn't know who Laurent was, not yet, but they sensed his importance. You can't miss it. It's in the way people's voices drop when he passes, the way security detail follows at a respectful distance, the way the very wealthy recognize one of their own, except Laurent isn't just wealthy. He's something else entirely. He reached me, and without hesitation, without checking to see who was watching, he cupped my face gently and kissed my cheek. "Ma chérie," he said softly, his slight French accent warming the words. "Forgive my delay. The Geneva meetings ran longer than expected." His hand settled at the small of my back, that familiar, protective gesture that still makes my heart flutter after 3 years of marriage. Derek's face was a study in confusion. "Gabrielle, who is this?" Laurent turned to him, his expression polite but distant, the way you might look at a stranger at a bus stop. "I'm Laurent," he said simply. "And you are?" "Derek Morrison. I work in pharmaceutical sales, regional director actually." He puffed his chest out slightly. "And this is my fiancée, Courtney." "Charming," Laurent said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. "And what brings you to the gala this evening?" "We're here with Morrison Pharmaceuticals' corporate invitation," Courtney said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. She was frantically typing on her phone, and I knew exactly what she was doing. Googling, searching, trying to figure out who this man was. "I work in hospitality," Laurent said modestly, which was technically true. He owns a chain of luxury hotels across Europe and Asia. 17 properties, each one catering to royalty, celebrities, and the kind of wealthy that doesn't need to announce itself. Courtney's face went pale as her search results loaded. I couldn't see her screen, but I knew what it said. Laurent Beaumont. Net worth $3.2 billion. Hotel magnate, philanthropist, one of Europe's most eligible bachelors until he mysteriously married 3 years ago and refused to discuss his wife publicly. She tugged at Derek's sleeve desperately, trying to show him her phone, but he was too focused on Laurent, trying to measure up, to compete, even though the competition was already over before it began. Patricia appeared beside us, slightly breathless. "Gabrielle, Mr. Beaumont, wonderful to see you both. Gabrielle, I've been meaning to ask, when will you be ready to reveal the anonymous donor behind the new contemporary wing?" Laurent's hand tightened slightly on my waist. "I don't think tonight is the time, my love." Derek's head snapped toward me. "My love? Wait, what?" I met his eyes directly for the first time since this conversation began. "Derek, Courtney, this is my husband, Laurent." The word husband seemed to echo in the sudden silence around us, I watched Derek's face cycle through emotions, disbelief, shock, confusion, and then, slowly, horribly, understanding. "Husband?" he repeated weakly. "You never mentioned— I didn't see a ring." I raised my left hand slowly, showing the vintage Art Deco diamond on my finger, 5 carats set in platinum with sapphires on either side. Laurent had found it at an estate sale in Lyon, and he'd known immediately it was meant for me, not because it was expensive, though it was, but because it was unique, understated, beautiful in a way that didn't need to shout. "I don't like flashy jewelry," I said calmly. "Unlike some people." Courtney dropped her phone. It clattered against the marble floor, the screen cracking, but she didn't move to pick it up. She was staring at Laurent like he was a ghost. Patricia, bless her, decided to twist the knife a little deeper. "Gabrielle, should we tell them about the foundation?" Laurent looked at me, one eyebrow raised in question. I nodded. Why not? The truth was coming out anyway. "The Beaumont Foundation," I said clearly, "which my husband and I run together, funded tonight's gala. We donated the $5 million for the Arts Initiative. We also funded the museum's new wing, the scholarship program for underprivileged art students, and the community outreach program." I paused, watching Derek's face drain of color. "And this estate? Where we're standing right now? My husband owns it. He's hosting tonight's event." Courtney made a small, strangled sound. Her phone was still on the ground, the cracked screen showing Laurent's Wikipedia page, his net worth, his properties, his influence. Everything Derek had bragged about, the promotion, the raise, the expensive wedding, suddenly seemed microscopic in comparison. Laurent, who had been observing this exchange with growing understanding, leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Were these the people bothering you, chérie?" "Old acquaintances," I said softly. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine to Laurent. I saw his expression shift, that subtle hardening around his eyes that appears when someone has crossed a line. He turned to Derek with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morrison," he said thoughtfully. "Derek Morrison, of Morrison Pharmaceuticals Regional Distribution?" Derek nodded, confused about where this was going. Laurent pulled out his phone with casual grace. "One moment, please." He dialed, and the room was so quiet we could all hear it ring. "Robert? Laurent Beaumont?" "Yes, I know it's late. Quick question about your regional sales team." Derek's face went from pale to gray. "That European distribution contract we discussed last month? The 5-year agreement for the new cardiac medication line? Let's revisit the distribution partners. I'm not confident Morrison Pharmaceuticals is the right fit after all." Laurent paused, listening. "Yes, I know they were your first choice, but I think we can find better. I'll have my people send over alternative options. Thank you, Robert. Enjoy your holiday." He hung up and smiled pleasantly at Derek. "Small world, isn't it? Robert Chen, CEO of Morrison Pharmaceuticals, is an old friend. We golf together. Well, we used to. He's been trying to secure a distribution deal with my pharmaceutical investment portfolio for months. It would have tripled your company's European revenue? Would have." The past tense hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You can't— I was just— "Just what?" Laurent asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Just humiliating my wife? Just mocking her accomplishments? Just revealing private details about her past to strangers for your own amusement?" Courtney finally found her voice. "Gabrielle, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We should totally catch up sometime. Maybe collaborate on something? I have 2 million followers and—" I held up my hand, stopping her mid-grovel. "On what, Courtney? Collaborating on what exactly? Live streaming humiliation? Teaching people how to tear others down for content? No, thank you. I'm good." That's when she realized her phone was still on the ground, still recording. Her live stream was still running. Her 2 million followers had watched everything. The comments were flooding in, thousands of them, and none of them were kind. "OMG, who is she? You just humiliated a billionaire's wife? Career over. This is why karma exists." She scrambled for her phone, ending the stream with shaking hands, but the damage was done. The internet never forgets. Screenshots were already being taken. The video was already being downloaded, shared, remixed with commentary. Patricia stepped forward, her voice firm. "I think it's time you both left. This is a private event, and you're making the other guests uncomfortable." Security appeared as if summoned by magic. 2 large men in dark suits, polite but immovable. Derek looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. Not just embarrassment, fear. "Gabriel, please, I didn't mean... I was just joking around. You know how I am. We go way back. You wouldn't let him ruin my career over a misunderstanding, right?" I looked at him for a long moment. This man who left me when I was struggling, who took my vulnerability and turned it into entertainment, who spent the last 20 minutes trying to make me feel small so he could feel big. "You didn't ruin your career, Derek," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself. I hope the brief satisfaction you got from humiliating me was worth it, because that's all you're going to have." Laurent took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. "Shall we greet the other guests, darling? I believe the mayor wanted to discuss the new arts initiative." "Of course," I said, letting him guide me away. As we walked across the room, I heard Derek behind us, trying to explain to the security guards, to Patricia, to anyone who would listen, trying to undo what couldn't be undone. Courtney was crying now, her perfectly applied makeup running, her phone clutched to her chest like a life preserver. But I didn't look back. I just kept walking, Laurent's hand warm in mine, toward a future that Derek would never understand. A future I'd built not despite my struggles, but because of them. Every waitressing shift, every night studying until dawn, every moment I felt like giving up but didn't, they had all led me here. Laurent leaned close and whispered, "Are you all right?" "I am now," I said, and I meant it. We spent the rest of the evening doing what we always do at these events. Laurent discussed business ventures with potential partners. I talked about upcoming exhibitions with museum patrons. We danced one slow dance when the orchestra played, swaying together in a room full of people who finally understood what I'd known all along. That worth isn't measured in dollar signs or job titles or social media followers. It's measured in character, in resilience, in the quiet dignity of knowing who you are, even when others try to tell you you're less. Later, as we drove home through snow-dusted streets, Laurent asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really," I said, "but thank you. For coming. For defending me." "Always," he said simply. "Though, for what it's worth, you were handling it beautifully before I arrived. You didn't need rescuing. You just needed backup." I smiled at that, because he was right. The woman Derek humiliated tonight wasn't the struggling student from 8 years ago. She was stronger, wiser, more sure of herself, and no amount of mockery could touch that. The next morning I woke to headlines. Courtney's video had gone viral, but not as the exposé she'd intended. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about karma, about what happens when you judge people without knowing their story. The comments were ruthless. Her sponsorships started dropping. Brands distanced themselves. Derek's company announced his termination 3 days later, not because of Laurent's call, though that didn't help, but because the video had made Morrison Pharmaceuticals look bad. Bad press, bad judgment, bad character. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't need to. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about destroying someone. It's about living so well, so completely, so joyfully, that their opinions become irrelevant. Derek didn't break me 8 years ago when he left. He freed me. He freed me to become the woman I was always meant to be. The woman who built a career she loved, who found a partner who cherished her, who created a life so beautiful that no amount of criticism could dim its light. And karma? She doesn't rush, she doesn't hurry, but she's always, always on time. If this story reminded you that your worth isn't determined by people who couldn't see it, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their chapter isn't over, it's just beginning. Subscribe because dignity, class, and karma, they never go out of style. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had a moment where life proved someone spectacularly wrong? I'll see you in the next one.